Hello everybody, welcome along to another in our series of COVID and property presentations. Today we're going to be looking at financial tips for property investors during COVID-19. Hopefully giving you a few insights and a few little helpful tips along the way as you look at what to do as an existing or potential property investor at this time. As we start off every time, we need to just have a look at our disclaimer and just a reminder that you need to review your personal circumstances before acting. Feel free to contact us, we'd love to help you out. Let's have a look at what we can do if you're a landlord. So if you're currently a landlord, COVID is obviously causing quite a few issues with tenancy affordability, etc. So there's some important things you need to consider that'll help you along. And the first one is make sure you just work with facts. There is so much speculation, so much rumor and so much manipulation of the system, you have to get the facts. For example, a lot of tenants during the COVID heard that the government was allowing negotiation for deferred tenancies and were just saying they were impacted by COVID, where they weren't actually done so. You need to make sure that if someone requests a COVID-19 reduction in their rent, that they actually have been impacted. Check that they lost their job, check that their income went down, check that their circumstances were affected adversely. It's only then that you can do that. Your facts should be gathered by your property manager. It's very important that they act professionally at this time, but get as many facts as you can so you can make the right decisions. You also have to understand what government initiatives are out there for you. There is some rent subsidy schemes that go to landlords. There's obviously some assistance there. The government is encouraging you through lower interest rates and repayment deferrals. Look at all those things to ensure that as a landlord, you can smooth out any bumps that come as a result of COVID. And seek professional support if you can. Don't try and manage these issues by yourself. You need professional guidance. The team here at SMATS is there to help you with our accounting team, our finance team, our property management and our property sales team. We're all here to help you. And if you've got a good tenant, particularly if he's been in your property for a long time, make sure you work sensibly with them to get a good result for both of you. Finding a new tenant at the moment is not that easy, although the market is starting to improve. But you don't want to be throwing out a good tenant just for the sake of it. If they need a little bit of assistance and they've looked after your property well, and particularly over a long duration, be sensible, give them a little bit of encouragement through either a deferral or a reduction. You don't have to, but it's certainly in your best interest to protect your property with a good tenant long term. If you're having significant financial pressure, not just on your property but on your other things, and particularly if you've had an issue with your tenant that has lost his job and can't make the full rental repayment, bear in mind you can defer your loan repayments on your property loan for up to 6 months. Now, it's not a wipeout of the interest, it's just pushing it down the road. It will still accrue, but you will not be required to make the monthly cash flow. You can start making it up in 6 months' time. That could be the difference between severe stress and a little bit of normality. So don't be afraid to consider taking that option if you are finding it hard to make ends meet. Here's a quick look at some of the provisions the government is allowing at the moment across Australia. And federally, they've been able to say that you're not allowed to cancel your rent as a result of COVID for residential. There is some support there and encouragement to negotiate everything out, but you're certainly not allowed to evict your tenant across Australia. If they have been impacted by COVID and that is the reason they're not paying their rent, you are prohibited from evicting them just for loss of not payment of rent. So make sure you don't get too aggressive there, because you could come a cropper with the authorities. They are wanting you to mutually agree terms to protect both of you. There is no legal requirement for you to give rent free, although it's recommended that you give some rent reduction and some rent deferral if the tenant is having significant problem. Don't be afraid to do that. I think it'll be payback for you later with a good tenant for a longer term. And of course, you still can terminate a tenant if it's not for a COVID affordability issue. So if it's a tenant that has not lost their job but refuses to pay rent, they can still be evicted. If it's from malicious damage of the property, they can still be evicted. So COVID only protects them if it is a affordability of the rent issue. It doesn't protect them from other issues such as still being able to afford but refusing to pay, or malicious damage on your property. As mentioned, you can get deferral of your loan repayments for up to 6 months, and that's across Australia, anywhere your property is. And each state government is also offering a little bit of land tax support if you've got COVID affected. You know, they're giving you a 25% discount or a 3-month waiver or a combination of the both across Australia. And your tenants may also qualify for a rent subsidy available in all the states except New South Wales at the moment of up to $2,000. And if that happens, they must pass that to you as the landlord. In the same regard as if you do get the state land tax concession, you must pass that down the line to the tenant through a reduced rent. So it's a two-way street. And just a reminder again, it's very important that they can only have these benefits if there is a genuine COVID impact through lost revenue, loss of employment, they got contaminated, or they're in severe financial hardship as a result of COVID-19. In regards to tips for if you're an owner or a potential buyer of a property at this moment, there's some things that you seriously want to consider. And the first one is not to be too nervous about short-term price instability. Whenever any crisis occurs, whether it be COVID, financial crisis, anything whatsoever, you're naturally going to have fear and speculation in prices. So you're going to see movements and conversations. Don't worry about them in the short term. You need to remember property is a long-term asset and should be viewed in that regard. You also want to ignore doomsdayers. We've had reports in the paper of people suggesting the property market could fall up to 30% as a result of COVID. Not only do we not agree with that, we think there's some factual reasons why that won't occur, which include the fact that interest rates are super low right now. You're not going to have necessarily sellers that are willing to take ridiculously low ball offers because interest rates have been reduced down to between 2 and 4%, which means they might as well have a holding cost for another year and see what happens of 2 to 4%, then perhaps offer an instant discount to sell the property of 5, 10, 15%. I just don't think that's going to occur, particularly because of the fact they can also defer their loan repayments for up to 6 months to see what happens. So they're far likely to delay a decision to sell than to take a lowball offer, thanks to that interest rates coming down. We're also going to see population growth go very low in Australia for a short term because roughly half of the population growth traditionally comes from migration. This is going to create a temporary vacuum, but as soon as the borders start reopening, you're going to see that fill very quickly. The people that were intending to migrate will arrive, the people that were due to migrate will also arrive, and then you're going to get an extra number of people that thought we might as well migrate to somewhere as wonderful as Australia because look how that happened. So don't forget that will need to stabilise. If you act quickly, you may be able to catch some unsuspecting sellers that don't realise that the reason there's not as many buyers is because they can't come into the country. But we're already seeing an increase in online purchases for people that are stuck overseas but still want to acquire. So that may not be as big an issue, but as that population growth returns, expect a kick up of prices. Obviously, the key thing that you have to do with your property is make sure it's as livable as possible. We've seen a separation of the market between livable, good property and barely livable, inferior property. You want to be in the livable sector. Size, space, location, all these things matter, but of course relevant to your budget and circumstances. If you have an existing property portfolio, it's getting harder and harder to finance your next acquisition. So you might find you're also needing to shuffle the deck a little bit and sell a property to buy a next property. So sell the ones that you consider to be inferior, replace it with something superior, and you can't go wrong. But as a general rule for an investor, we've always said, don't buy a property that you wouldn't live in. If you wouldn't live in it, why would someone else live in it and pay you a premium rent? Why would someone else come and pay you a premium when you want to sell it in the future? The more livable, likely the more profitable. As I mentioned, reshuffling your portfolio is something that you generally want to consider. It is something that you need to do because the property market is shifting and changing in its direction. We're not likely to see significant increase on inferior property because there's just too much supply coming into the market of that at the moment. Reshuffle if you need to, you won't regret it. And if you haven't already bought your future home, you want to seriously consider doing that sooner than later. Having too many investment properties but no future home is not really the wisest choice for most people. You need somewhere to live because it's a basic human necessity. And I haven't yet found a landlord that would allow me to stay in their property for free. So if you have your home, hopefully one day you can pay it off and you can live there free of cost, and exploit that, capital. It's still only the only capital gains tax free asset in Australia for investors. You want to have a look there. If you live in your home, principal residence exemption applies. And don't expect sellers to give you those massive discounts. As I mentioned earlier, they're going to be reluctant thanks to the lower holding costs and the deferral. If you want to buy, you're going to need to be reasonable in your offer, and you're going to need to entice them to a sale, because there'll be a few people behind you that are willing to do that too. Don't expect to have a massive discount on a premium property. It's highly unlikely at this time. And of course, the trick is, with a time like now, you have to act. You can't make money if you don't acquire. So fortune does follow the brave, but you've also got to be careful not to be foolish, because it doesn't follow the foolish. You don't want to be buying somebody else's mistake. You don't want to buy a property that is not, adequately livable, and therefore giving you the best opportunity of future capital gain success. We've been here to help property investors in Australia since 1995, over 25 years, for helping you with your tax, your finance, your property management, your property sales. Our team is ready, available and willing to give you assistance to suit your personal circumstances and help you get through with your existing portfolio, add to it, or start off your new portfolio in Australia. If you need help, visit our websites, drop us an email. We'll look forward to hearing from you.